I'm 42, and I'm a single mom. Or, at least, I used to think I was more than that. A few weeks ago, my son, let's call him Luke, came to me and said he wanted to move out. That part wasn't a shock. He's 19, he's in college, and I knew this day would come. What I wasn't prepared for was where he said he wanted to go. It wasn't a dorm. It wasn't an apartment with friends. He said he wanted to move in with his dad. Not the man I was married to for 10 years. Not the man who adopted him when he was 6. No, he meant his biological father. A man who disappeared before Luke was even born. Someone Luke has never actually met in person. I thought he was joking at first. I laughed, but Luke didn't. He just stared at me, expressionless, and repeated it like he was asking for more potatoes at dinner. Calm, detached. He said they've been talking for a while now. That part hit me hard, because I had no idea. I didn't even know he knew his name. I did everything I could to raise Luke right. I worked 2 jobs when he was little. I stayed up with him when he had ear infections and nightmares. I coached his soccer team even though I didn't understand a single rule. I saved every damn penny to help with his college fund. And now I'm hearing that this stranger, this man who didn't even send a card on his birthdays, is someone Luke feels curious about. Curious enough to leave home, to leave me. He tried to soften it, said it wasn't personal, that he just wanted to explore that part of himself, that it wasn't about what I did or didn't do, but I couldn't even look at him while he said it. I just kept thinking, you already have a father. You had one who showed up for your graduation, who taught you how to drive, who stayed up with you studying for your math finals, the one who walked away from me but stayed in your life because of you. That man, Mark, wasn't his biological dad, but he was his father in every way that mattered. And now even Mark's being pushed aside like he didn't matter either. I asked Luke how long he'd been in contact with this man. He said almost a year. A whole year of emails, texts, and calls. A whole year of lying to me. And the worst part? He told me his biological dad had reached out to me first, over a year ago. He said he sent me a letter, but I never got anything. Or maybe I did. There was a white envelope in the mail about a year ago with no return address. I remember that now. I tossed it. I thought it was spam. Or worse, some stalker or scammer. I didn't open it, and now I'm wondering if that letter could have changed everything. But that's not even the strangest part, because what Luke told me next is what's been haunting me every night since. What he said is the reason I haven't slept more than a few hours in days. He said his real dad told him that the only reason he ever left was because I asked him to, and that's a complete lie. Or at least, I think it is. But now, I'm not so sure anymore. After Luke dropped that bomb about me asking his biological father to leave, I went numb. I couldn't even respond. I just nodded like I was okay, like I understood. But inside, my chest was caving in. The truth? I don't remember ever asking him to leave. I remember being 22, terrified, pregnant, and alone. I remember him saying he wasn't ready, and then disappearing. I remember crying myself sick for weeks after he ghosted me. That's the story I've carried for 19 years. But now, suddenly, there's a different version out there. One where I'm the villain. One where I told him to go and never come back. And Luke believes that version. I can see it in his face. I barely made it through the next day. Everything felt different. The house was quiet, and I knew Luke was avoiding me. He left early, came home late. I tried texting him from the kitchen once, just something simple. Can we talk later? No reply. Later that night, I was doing laundry in his room. I know, I probably shouldn't have. When I saw his tablet on the bed, the screen was still on, and a message popped up. It was from a name I didn't recognize. Just keep reminding her it was her choice. Don't let her rewrite history. My stomach dropped. I knew I shouldn't, but I tapped it. The conversation was long, really long, and what I saw chilled me to the bone. This man, his real dad, wasn't just reconnecting. He was rewriting the entire past, feeding Luke a story where I cut him out, where I kept father and son apart all these years, where I moved on too fast and replaced him. Worse, Luke was eating it up, and that's when I realized, this isn't just about curiosity. Someone is trying to take my son away from me. The next morning, Luke barely looked at me. He was getting ready to leave again, backpack slung over one shoulder, headphones already in. I asked where he was going, and he just said, out. Not school, not work, not even a lie to soften the distance. Just out, like I was no one. I watched him walk down the driveway, and something inside me cracked. This wasn't my kid. This wasn't the boy who used to leave sticky notes on the fridge with doodles and "Love you, Mom" scribbled in Sharpie. This boy, this man, looked right through me, like I was background noise. That night, I stayed up staring at the ceiling. The words from that message haunted me. Don't let her rewrite history. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Why would anyone say that? What was there to rewrite? So I did something I hadn't done in years. I dug into an old box in the closet, the one with faded photos, hospital bracelets, birth announcements, and at the very bottom, I found it. A letter. Unopened. No return address. It was yellowing at the edges, postmarked from 19 years ago. My hands shook as I opened it. The handwriting was his. I recognized it instantly. He said he was scared, but he loved me. He said he needed time, but wanted to be there. For me, and for the baby. He asked me to call him. Said he'd wait for my answer. I never saw this letter. I never answered. It must have arrived after I moved apartments. Or maybe I missed it entirely in the chaos. But that changes everything, doesn't it? What if he didn't leave me? What if I left him, and didn't even know it? I stared at the letter until my vision blurred. My hands were sweaty, and I couldn't shake this sick feeling that I'd just opened a door that was better left shut. Because if this letter was real, and it sure looked that way, then maybe I hadn't been abandoned. Maybe I never gave him a chance to be a father. And if that's true, what does that make me? But I couldn't stop there. I had to know. I remembered I still had one of my old phones in the garage, buried in a box of chargers and junk. After digging through 10 years of clutter, I found it. Miraculously, it turned on. I pulled up my oldest contacts, and there it was. His name, still in there, like a ghost waiting in plain sight. I didn't even think. I just hit call. It rang twice before going to voicemail, and hearing that voice again, older but still his, sent a chill down my spine. I hung up. I didn't leave a message. I couldn't. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered, and all he said was, "I was wondering when you'd call." Just like calm, casual, like this wasn't nearly 2 decades too late. I didn't respond. Couldn't. I just listened. And then he said something I'll never forget. "You should have told him the truth sooner. He's mine too, you know." My stomach dropped. He wasn't just talking about Luke. He was talking about something else. Someone else. That last line, "He's mine too, you know," rang in my ears long after the call ended. I thought he was referring to Luke. Obviously, Luke. But something about his tone, the two, it didn't feel right. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat on the floor in the kitchen with old photo albums, scrolling through memories like they held answers. And then it hit me, the timing. Luke was born in December, but I wasn't with just one person that spring. There was one night, one stupid, impulsive night I'd buried so far down I forgot it even happened. I told myself for years it didn't matter, that there was no way the dates lined up. But now I wasn't so sure. So I dug up the old hospital records. I still had them, copies from when I applied for Luke's first passport. There it was. The due date, almost 2 weeks earlier than I remembered, and suddenly I couldn't breathe. Because if that's true, if Luke came late, there's a real chance the man I always believed was the father might not be. I've built my entire life, his entire life, on a version of the truth that may have never been real. And this man, this ghost from my past, maybe he wasn't the one who left. Maybe I was the one who ran. I kept it to myself for a few days. The letter, the call, the possibility. I watched Luke come and go, quieter than usual but still polite. Still calling me Mom, though now it sounded measured, like a placeholder, like he was just waiting for someone else to fill the role. I wanted to tell him. God, I almost did. Twice. But each time I couldn't find the words. How do you look your child in the eye and say, "Hey, I might have lied to you your whole life without realizing it"? So instead, I ordered the kit. A simple DNA test. The kind people use for fun, to find out if they're 12% Scandinavian or cousins with a medieval king. Only this wasn't for fun. It arrived in a white box, clean, clinical. I stared at it for 2 days before finally asking Luke if he'd take it. I told him it was for medical history, just in case. He didn't ask many questions. He said sure and handed it back without hesitation. He didn't know what it meant. Not yet, but I did. And while we waited for the results, I found myself standing in front of the mirror every morning, asking myself the same question over and over. What if he's not his father? Not the man I told him about. Not the one he just found. Not the one who stayed. Then who the hell am I in this story? Because if I've been wrong about this for 19 years, what else have I been wrong about? The email arrived on a Thursday afternoon while I was folding laundry. Just a soft ding from my phone, like any other notification. Harmless, ordinary, except it wasn't. My heart started pounding the second I saw the subject line. Your DNA results are ready. I didn't open it right away. I sat with it, stared at it. My thumb hovered over the screen for what felt like forever. I already knew the truth. I felt it. But seeing it in writing, that would make it real, permanent. When I finally tapped in, my hands were ice. The confirmation was right there in black and white. Luke's biological father wasn't who I thought it was. It wasn't the man I spent years resenting. It wasn't the man who left a letter I never answered. It wasn't the man Luke had spent the last year connecting with. It was someone else. Someone I barely remembered. Someone Luke had never heard of. And just like that, everything shattered. Not just for me, but for him. Because, in chasing the truth, He'd built an entire bond believed was his father. But now, I had to tell him he wasn't. I waited until Sunday to tell him. I made pancakes, like I used to when he was little, set the table, tried to keep things light, but he barely looked up from his phone the whole time. He was distracted, distant, still texting him, the man he thought was his father. I couldn't keep it in anymore. I told him I had something serious to talk about, and for once, he actually put the phone down. I explained everything, how I found the old letter, how I made a call, how things from back then didn't. And finally, I told him about the DNA test. At first, he didn't react, just blinked at me like he hadn't heard right. Then he laughed, a short, stunned laugh that didn't reach his eyes. I handed him my phone, showed him the results, let him read it for himself. He got up and walked out the front door without saying a word. I didn't chase him. I just sat there in that quiet house and waited. 2 hours later, he came back. He didn't look angry. He looked empty. He said one sentence before going straight to his room. So, I've lost 2 dads in 1 week. And then he closed the door. Didn't speak to me for the rest of the night. Didn't say goodnight. Didn't say mom. I think that word might be gone now. And the silence? It hurts worse than anything else ever could. I was dozing on the couch, half watching some late-night infomercial when the knock came. Not loud, but sharp, quick, like someone who wasn't sure they should be there. I thought maybe Luke forgot his key, or maybe one of his friends. But when I opened the door, my heart dropped straight to the floor. It was him, the man Luke thought was his father. The one I called after 19 years. He looked older than I remembered. Grayer, thinner. But his eyes? Same, uncomfortably calm. And beside him, Luke. He wouldn't look at me. I stepped aside to let them in. He didn't say a word, just walked past me, straight to the kitchen table like he belonged there. I finally asked what they were doing here, my voice barely holding. He looked me in the eye and said something I wasn't expecting. I told him everything, and he still wants me in his life. So I brought him here to tell you that, face to face. I turned to Luke, waiting for some flicker of emotion, anger, confusion, anything. But all he said was, I'm not leaving you, Mom, but I'm not cutting him out either. I can't. I don't want to. It wasn't a declaration. It was a line in the sand, a quiet, final one. And the man I'd once loved? He just sat there, like he'd already won. They sat across from me, Luke, silent and stiff, and the man I once thought I'd build a life with. I was surrounded by 2 people who each held a piece of my past, but neither felt like family anymore. He kept talking, about how he and Luke had connected deeply, about how blood matters, how he should have fought harder to be in our lives. I barely heard him. I was watching Luke's face, and that's when I saw it. Not hate, not hurt, but doubt. A seed had been planted, and it was growing. And that's when I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to consider before. This man didn't come back for Luke. He came back for me. The sudden reappearance, the twisting of the past, the manipulation, it all made sense. He wanted back in, and he used Luke to do it. He'd crafted a narrative where I was the one who drove him away, then came back to fix it. The hero in his own story. But here's the thing. I had one more truth left to tell. I asked Luke for a moment alone, and to my surprise, he agreed. He followed me into the hallway, and for the first time in days, he looked me in the eyes, and I told him about the other man, the one-night mistake, the possibility that neither of the men he believed in were his father, that the DNA test hadn't matched with this man, but also hadn't confirmed the other either, because I'd never tested the second. Luke went still. I braced for yelling, but he just nodded, like a part of him already knew. Then he asked the question I'd been dreading most. Do you even know who my father is? I didn't answer, because the truth was I didn't, and just like that, something between us shifted. Not in anger, not in blame, but in clarity. Because all this time, we were both chasing ghosts. Luke walked out that, but not with him, not with me, alone. He said he needed space, time, answers. I let him go. Because sometimes being a parent isn't about holding on. It's about knowing when to let go. I haven't heard from him since. I don't know if he'll come back, but I finally understand one thing. I didn't lose my son. I just have to earn him again, and this time, with nothing but the truth.